Hello, hello, and most welcome to Heidegger 1652 of the series. This is a Derrida turn, and we will talk about Life Death by Jacques Derrida. And we are currently on page 71 of the English translation. One more page, please. And we ended last at the very end of the first paragraph. We've been discussing how Cangelham tries to get rid of metaphor and turn it into concept. And this, I would say, perpetual struggle within those strands of knowledge that claim, could you call it, objective truths, or goes under different names, eternal concepts that never change, and also have an independency from discourse context. And in order to create oneself in one's own view, this is also important, it's a subjective take. But if you want to, in your own eyes, try to evict the dangerous metaphors that are unsteady, that are changeable, not permanent, not like the classical laws of physics, which are eternal, unchangeable, forever. And they have been unchangeable, unchanged, steady since the Big Bang. You almost have to look. You can look everywhere for some sort of exception to this, very hard to find. They all fall for that, I've been thinking to myself sometimes. And we are now going to, and this is going to be quite interesting, to see how Cangelham operate. What is his working mechanism for this functionality of presenting the truth on the plate in isolation? How does he go into prove or show or clearly point to the isolation of truthfulness and how objects are strictly out there and nowhere else. Well, let's read the text and then we can have a summary of this, because it is fundamental for all strands of knowledge, no matter what you are doing. If you're into literature, linguistics, definitely, biology, chemistry, language, particular language, sociology, psychology, and so forth. How does Canguilhem operate? He begins at a certain point with what Claude Bernard calls his fundamental conception of life, which can be summed up in two aphorisms. One, life is death. Two, life is creation. Canguilhem notes that Claude Bernard had been conscripted into the anti-materialist camp in biology and philosophy. Because, different as to which side he was furnishing arguments, he was possessed by an idea, namely that the organized living being is the temporarily perpetuated manifestation of, and listen now, guiding idea of its evolution. He had a guiding idea, which was that there was a guiding idea, and that physiochemical conditions cannot account for the specific form of their composition in this or that organism. In lectures on the phenomena of life common to animals and plants, Claude Bernard writes, in the living being, there are necessarily two orders of phenomena. One, the phenomena of vital creation or organizing synthesis. Two, the phenomena of death or organic destruction. The first of these two orders is alone, without direct analogy. It is peculiar special to the living being. This developmental synthesis is what is truly vital. The phenomena of death, of organic destruction linked to physiochemical functioning and expenditure are, to be sure, a part of life. Life is life plus death. But in accordance with a dissymmetry that Claude Bernard insists makes of organizing synthesis a lone, irreplaceable life without analogy. It alone is what is truly vital. In the life that includes death, there's only one true representative of life that thus gets marked twice, remarked upon twice, once in a living way and once in a dead way, etc. Let us go a little farther. In what is truly vital, organic creation, there are still two syntheses. The one, the chemical synthesis, constitutes the protoplasm. The other, the morphological synthesis, gives forms to and molds living matter. These two syntheses, which contemporary biology has brought together, demonstrate that cytoplasm is a matter that has already been informed, already been structured, so is not a figureless matter. Now, despite what certain statements seem to suggest Claude Bernard, Canguilhem tells us while citing him, suspected that a morphological synthesis was already operating in the chemical synthesis, that matter was already structured. It is with regard to this pre-structure of cytoplasm, in order to define, in fact, that Claude Bernard writes the phrase I recall 2 weeks ago that Canguilhem cites the manifestation here and now of a primitive impulse, of primitive action, and of an instructional sign that nature repeats after having ordered it in advance. This is the beginning in Canguilhem's text of a movement that I will describe, for lack of a better image, as a hesitation waltz. Reread closely, and you will understand to the point of hearing the violins what I mean by this. Nietzsche, as you know, appealed to dance, but he would have been very a dialectical way of dancing the waltz of waltzen, which means turning round or in a circle. You know, in any case, you will find in your music dictionary the definition of waltz in 3/4 time. The step of the waltz is made up of 3 parts. A gliding step, then a coming together, a second gliding step, or better, the step that glided first is detached from the other, which then glides in turn. These movements are done while turning, and in this turning, round the dancers move along a circle or an ellipse on the shape of the room. the waltz originated in Germany. But a Frenchman, Castille Blaze, writes, the waltz that we took back from the Germans in 1795 had been for 400 years a French dance. So Cangelan wants to show that Claude Bernard was still in metaphor, but already in the concept. That the concept in which he already was only a metaphor. But that the metaphor in which he still was already a concept that nonetheless remained a metaphor in which one could see the beginning of a concept that nonetheless retained within itself a preconceptual metaphorical element that prefigured a quasi-metaphorical concept that retained within itself a metaphor. Finally, wherein one could have retrospectively deciphered the precursory message of a concept that is, in the end, adequate. That is to say, that works and that makes science work. As one can see it working today, if one is well placed, not too close and not too far from the laboratories of Rue Jean-Jacques. The violins stop here. Now let us watch the film again in slow motion. First step. Claude Bernard seems to have sensed that biological heredity consists in the transmission that is today called coded information, semantically an instructional sign, is not far from a code. Second time, second step. It would, however, be incorrect to conclude from this that the analogy, the semantic analogy, corresponds to a real filiation of concepts. What follows is a historical reference to the fact that the contexts were totally different, and that Claude Bernard could not have had access to the modern concept of heredity, which is completely new. Can we have the text up, please? Third time, third step. And yet it can be argued that there exists between the Bernardian concept of an instructional sign of evolution and current concepts of genetic code and genetic message, a functional affinity. It is at this point, with this functional affinity, it is analogical, metaphorical, because of the affinity, or conceptual, because of the function. We do not know that the metaphorical borders on the conceptual. It is at this point that Canguilhem asks the question, which I quote again. This affinity is based on the shared relation to the concept of information. If genetic information is defined as the coded program of the synthesis of proteins, then can we not maintain that the following terms, all coming from Claude Bernard, and which are used not just once and by chance, but constantly through his work? Instructional sign, guiding idea, vital design, vital preordination, vital plan, meaning of phenomena. Are so many attempts to define in the absence of the adequate concept, and through the convergence of metaphors, a biological fact that is in some sense designated, before being attained. Those are the 3 times or steps of the first movement. It is left suspended at a hesitation question between metaphor and concept. One step taking over for the other, and then it starts up again. Note that neither in this first cycle of 3 times, nor in the cycle that follows, will Kangalem, who nonetheless asks lots of questions, which always come down to the same one, namely, whether something is a concept or a metaphor. Ever ask from one step to the next just what a step into metaphor is or is not. Papa, just what a step into concept is or is not. Just what a concept or a metaphor is. This he knows. The only hint of a definition he gives regards the concept, namely that it is effective and operational and helps us move forward. But what would he say if one were to point out to him that, according to his own description, in this text and those of Bachelard elsewhere, there are also operational metaphors, as we well know, metaphors that help us to advance. There are obstructive metaphors and operational metaphors, obstructive concepts, and operational concepts. The distinguishing criterion is not between concept and metaphor, but between the useful and the detrimental in science. This is very Nietzschean. And Canguilhem, who also makes of the concept a production of life, should have come around to recognizing this. What is certain is that the distinction that he wants to save at all costs that between concept and metaphor is pre-critical, never problematized, and therefore remains as such an anti-operational obstacle. It prevents the re-elaboration or recasting of this entire problem from taking place. After this first movement in 3 times or steps that has just been suspended, we start up again with another movement in 3 times or steps. First time, first step. To answer the question left suspended, Canguilhem notes that Claude Bernard remained within the metaphor of what contemporary biology knows in the proper sense, because he stated in psychological terms, guiding idea, design, and so on. What the science of today, which is now a sure path, understands by the word information in the physical sense. A notion Canguilhem is a bit too quick to accept, though we will return to this point. Thus one, he remains in the psychical metaphor of the physical. But second time, second step, Claude Bernard, who never ceases to surprise us, also ventured to speak of the law of order and succession that gives the meaning or the relation of the phenomena, a Leibnizian expression that is very close to the modern logic of hereditary form, which can be, I quote, related to the fundamental discovery in molecular biology of the structure of the deoxyribonucleic acid molecule, the essential constituent of chromosomes. The vehicles of genetic inheritance, vehicles whose very number is a specific hereditary characteristic. Third time, third step. It is starting from this order of succession of a finite number of bases along a double helix of sugar phosphates. From this order that constitutes the instructional code, the language of the program, etc., that modern biology has moved on to language itself, that is, has changed languages in order to use the code of language in order to replace by the code of language the language of physics or chemistry or even mathematics, or at least a mathematics governed by two geometric models. It is here that Canguilhem writes, and I quote again what I quoted earlier. Message, information, program, code, instruction, decoding. Such are the new concepts of the knowledge of life. But one will object, are not these concepts ultimately imported metaphors, reminiscent of the way Claude Bernard, through a convergence of metaphors, sought to make up for the lack of an adequate concept? Apparently, yes, but in fact, no. For what guarantees the theoretical effectiveness or the cognitive value of a concept is its operational function, and thus the possibility it offers for the development and progress of knowledge. I think I will have a look-see at what we have so far. A little recap among the gems of the text. Let's have a look-see. That's some fresh air. First page we read here was 71. And in the quote there from Bernard, in the living being, down, yes, exactly. In the living being, there are necessarily two orders of phenomena. The phenomena of vital creation or organizing synthesis. The phenomena of death or organic destruction. The first of these two orders of phenomena is alone without direct analogy. It is peculiar, special to the living beings. This developmental synthesis is what is truly vital. Vital is, I would say, is a key word. Don't forget that one. Then we go to 72. It's a bit hard to find. It must be down to the, but yeah, it's a bit up there. You take the Claude Bernard there, to the right of 103 in the marginal. Yeah, that's the one. But just on top of that, actually, it is with regard to this, sorry, it is with regard to this pre-structure of cytoplasm. In order to define it, in fact, that Claude Bernard writes the phrase, the manifestation here now of a primitive impulse, of a primitive action, and of an instructional sign. This instructional sign repeats after having ordered it in advance. It is like a germ, a seed to the plant, to the living organism. It just needs to develop, come out of its sort of protective kernel, get out. It's close to the Aristotelian potentiality. And it continues on page 73, third paragraph. first time, first step. Claude Bernard seemed to have sensed that biological heredity consists in a transmission of something that is today called coded information. Semantically, an instructional sign is not far from a code. So the deoxyboric acid is nothing but an instructional sign for what is to become. The cause, the original cause. In the universe, we would call it initial conditions. You might remember that one. The genetic message is mentioned further down. It is at this point, that's a bit down, third time, and go into third time a bit. It is at this point, yes. It is at this point with the functional affinity. It is analogical, metaphorical, because of the affinity of the conception, because of the function. That the metaphorical borders on the conceptual. Go to page 74. And there is an interesting discussion about pa here. It's pa like step and pa like not. I will not read the whole Derridian text there, but let me go into the zest of it. This he knows. Next line, if you go down one, this he knows. The only hint of a definition he gives regards the concept, namely that it is effective, operational, and helps us move forward. But what would he say if one were to point out to him that, according to his own description in this text, and those of Bachelard elsewhere, there are also operational metaphors, as we well know, metaphors that helps us to advance. And exactly, they are the pushing tendency in everything. And we've shown that earlier. We have the dead thing, the concept or the origin, and the metaphor brings forward. This is exactly what metaphors does. But Bernard, he wants to cut it into, Cangelham wants to cut it into stone. It becomes static, stable, neither dead nor alive, or I would say completely dead. Why is this incredible want to get into concepts and shy away from metaphors? The contingency of metaphor seems to scare. They have the randomness. You just pick a metaphor. It's your choice. They are also chosen to fit the fact, not the opposite. I think we mentioned a couple of those things before. They are connected to will, the want of the person who does it. Subject is in on it. They feel, I think, haphazardous, by chance, arbitrary. Inside a big card game, you just choose one and then another one. But this exactly choosing is the movement that goes forward step by step, if you like, or as in a waltz. This is a far incredible leap from the classical model. Everything is moving constantly forward with the metaphors. He shies away from this. He wants to go away from it, marginalize the metaphors by, he's actually shooting himself in the foot by doing that. This is how you get rid of reality. You can read his quotes as an instructional manual how to produce falsehood. Let me give you an example that is quite fresh. We earlier, I think this is some 700 episodes ago, went through the Hungarian-American neurologist Georgi Buzaki. I will not spell it here, it will be in the description. You found out that the brain, far from being representational of the outside world, like true signs or concepts, if you like, are random. The inside of the head is random. It's a random machine in every aspect to produce action, doings, a step by step, if you like. The old model of the brain as a Kangelan thing, the concepts that represents outsideness, because this is what Kangelan wants. He wants the concept to be real and eternal and represent something in this outer reality. We know that outer reality doesn't exist, and neither does it bother the representation of it. A brain that represented could never ever work. It wouldn't produce action. Our organisms are inclined to action, not sitting and looking at the television, which is even that a sort of action. But if you think something completely passive, being into a coma, or why not being a brain in a vat, as Hilary Putnam and John Searle would have it, then possibly you can start speaking about concepts. But no, not even in neurology anymore does anybody pertain to this very, very fixated and untrue ways. And I have to repeat, Paul Feyerabend, it is not even false. There's no way to falsify this tendency. And actually, Kangelham himself is just mentioning it briefly, like it was his shame, like an offspring that you happen to have made at a certain time and you don't want to be associated with anymore, only paying some sort of monthly compensation to the mother. It's not honest. And Derrida was, this is in the 70s, this is early on. He reveals these tendencies that I would say the other authors that we read are victims for. They play by them, play by these rules, looking for originals and true concepts, non-contradiction. Buzaki say anything that doesn't contain contradiction is non-functioning, doesn't work. It's, as you would use the language of Derrida, it's dead in the way, in the negative way, not life, death, but only death. Not being resurrected or brought forward, maybe some of the time, not being able to go to the next step. Not a bad text at all, I would say. It's part I really like. Kalle. Oh, Kalle wants me to spell the name of the Hungarian guy. Oh, that is, let's see if I can. Yeah, let's look for him instead. If you Google, I can try to help you with some of the letters.
Okay.
Like all Hungarian names, it defies spelling.
Let me.
Yeah, I'm gonna guide you here. Let's start with a G. That's a J, G. And after the G, no, that's J, G, like in George. Yeah. Y. And then the Swedish letter of Ö. Then we have the first name. It's like the composer, the third one. If you just copy that.
Victor.
If you go down there, you'll find a composer. So the first name is that. It's not the composer though. Well, it's good, yeah. And then you change the surname. It's tricky. And we have D, yeah. And there we have him. And you have his book as well.
The rain from inside out.
Yes, yes. We had that book some time ago. And what does it mean from inside out? Well, reality is structured by a random brain. Randomness, contradiction is truth. Another way of describing the brain. The old model, the Cangular model, is that it's an information storage only. Concepts, representation. But we now know it's an information producer. The only thing in the universe that produces information, according to Georgie, however you pronounce it. You can well say that Derrida was ahead of his time.
What did you say earlier about this Georgie? So I guess things are not pointed to something else. But everything is entangled, the outside and inside. And the step and non-step.
Yeah, I can really recommend the book Inside Out, The Brain Inside Out. It's not a tough read.
So here, should I say something?
Yeah, you're more than welcome to comment. I'm finished.
So here, this on page 74, just what a step pa into the metaphor is or not is not pa. That is in French, the word pa means both step and not. And usually we think that puns or wordplays are silly, they're not taken seriously. But I would say that in Pans you have already para-consistent logic. Because
definitely
they show that Pans show that everything is interwoven.
Definitely.
And to simplify, you could say that Pa, in the sense, no, that Pa as an occasion, is stands for the father figure that we have discussed in this series, and Pa, in the sense of mother, is the step, the living thing. But both things are interwoven. And I would say, like to say, I love this. Let me see this metaphor about the dance. And I would like to show here from metaphors we live by James Lakoff and Mark Jonsson. One thing quickly. They comment on dance, if I can find it quickly. It should be on page 2 or 3. Yes.
Wow.
Here. So this is on page 5. So they speak about arguments. Argument is war.
Oh yeah.
Arguments are wars are different kinds of things, verbal discourse and argument conflicts. But arguments partially structured, understood, performed that are all about in terms of war. The concept is metaphorically structured, tactic is metaphorically structured, and consequently blah 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 blah. And then no. It was here on the same page. The preceding paragraph. Perhaps the most neutral way of describing this difference between the cultural and ours would be say that we have a discourse form structured in terms of battle, and they have one structured in terms of dance.
Yeah, very good, fantastic. Very good.
And Lakoff indirectly argues, if you use that word, argues that the one about dancing is better because it's softer.
It's softer. It doesn't have the battle form that we inherited, I think, from the Greek agora, where one was winning the argument and the winner had the truth. It's a subjectivizing of truth, and we're still under that domain, except for the realm of science, where we change completely. And this is why I brought up Georgi Bujaki from neurology, but we also have examples from science of cognition, and we have examples from coming now more and more from chemistry, and even the area of Kengelem, biology and molecular biology. It's very interesting. There's a change now.
Aristotle's logic is based on the idea of putting forward an argument or a proposition and then a counter proposition, a negation. But if you use puns like this by Derrida, pa, you see already in the proposition there is a negation included.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So let's say they are taking a step. In French, you could it includes already a negation in one sense. They are not taking a step, or so everything is interwoven, both the affirmation and the negation. And it's a very so things are not black and white.
No.
Perhaps they are, but they're interwoven smoothly. That's the reality.
Yeah, that's the reality of it. It's a dance. Contradictions are not bad. They are necessary. Without contradictions, there is nothingness. We don't have anything. There is nullification, as Rudolf Gachet would say. So he's a defender of life and meaning and understanding. I would say Derrida.
Okay, perhaps we should conclude there.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Kalle, for this nice thing of Lakoff Johnson. I do recommend Metaphors We Live By, when they wrote about philosophy and when they wrote about, well, at least George Lakoff wrote about mathematics with a mathematician whose name I forgot. Thank you very much and have a very good one.